5 talking about potatoes and air pollution.
Potatoes, boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
Or this time, they will take over the planet.
Climate change. Everyone's talking about Greta Thunberg. Is a very topical climate change episode of Doctor Who discussions today.
Yay, we are in theme with everybody.
Even though I don't know if this episode necessarily has anything all that nuanced or new or interesting to say about climate change, it's just kind of like a thing that happens to be tangentially related to the episode, really.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I get it. There's already a lot of commentary just baked into the Sontarans as characters, to do with war and cultural looks at how war and death in the field and stuff like that. And there's some interesting stuff said with them on that front, but I feel like someone was just like, let's just throw in a nice anti-pollution message in there without actually making it the message. I think there was potentially something to be said with if we'd had more dialogue about it, from the Sontarans, where it's human nature is to the point where we don't even have to do anything all that much to kill your planet. You'll help us get rid of your own population for us just because you'd rather have your cars and stuff than actually do anything to save the environment. But then again, that's the point of Atmos. Maybe if they'd actually made it an anti-pollution message, then they'd come off like major hypocrites or have to rewrite the whole episode because the villain is the anti-pollution guy, even though it all turned out to be a trick. It's a very mixed messaging here.
Yeah, don't have very strong feelings on any of it.
Which is understandable. I think this is one of those episodes that's the definition of a serviceable Doctor Who adventure, which by Doctor Who standards makes it average, and which by a lot of other shows' standards make it this really fun thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's there's not all that much to get into thematically. It's the Sontarans are here. It's a Doctor versus Sontaran adventure. It's a very straightforward thing.
Pretty much a modern spin on a classic 4-part Doctor Who serial.
Which will also be true of another time next series when we get classic aliens back for the first time. Oh yeah, this is very kind of shallow thematically. I think there are a lot of good character moments, especially for Donna. It's weird, again, going through these episodes and being like, man, Donna's really not around for a long time before we immediately start being like she's been on 3 adventures by now, technically 4, and it's already her life and her perspective has changed this much, and I buy it. It doesn't feel like a forced thing when she's walking home. Oh man, just people out in the street just hanging out, and I've seen all this. How can I ever come back to this life again?
I can't go back to the mundane life after seeing all the horrors the Doctor has shown me.
Which, speaking of taters, is pretty much the ending of Lord of the Rings, so why not?
Yeah. You see, traveling with the Doctor is like traveling with a space hippie. You come back home super woke.
And I mean, that explains why Wilf likes him so much. I totally believe that Wilf would have been a hippie in his prime. There's a lot of character stuff like that I like. I like bringing Martha back, even though this is very much a story setup where I feel like we could have not had Martha and it wouldn't have impacted things too much.
But it's nice to see her, nevertheless.
Yeah, and this is where part of the interesting thing is, where we do the thing that will become kind of more common as the show goes on, where it's Martha has joined UNIT, and it's wow, is this what you do to people? It's you hang out with the Doctor, and inadvertently you end up becoming a soldier. And it's interesting contrasting that with the Sontarans, because that is not the Doctor's intent at all, and yet it kind of parallels the Sontarans in a way where they literally just keep creating soldiers from themselves, and the Doctor keeps putting bits of himself in his companions, and that gets them in these situations where it's yeah, you basically made them soldiers for your personal army, whether you meant to or not.
The whole universe is afraid of the Doctor, which is elaborated in the Moffat era, so
yeah.
This could be the beginning of a change of the Doctor's approach two things in the modern series.
My main thought coming out of this episode, and like has been like this for a while, is just like, I want the Sontarans to be villains again. Like after this we'll have Strax, and then it's been over a decade since this story, and we've not done a Sontaran villain story since.
They've been villains in novels and comics and audio dramas after this, but on the main show, no. They're played for laughs after this is over.
And it's such a shame because I feel like there's such good like foils for the Doctor. Like in a lot of ways, I think you could argue the Sontarans like philosophically are an even better like arch nemesis for the Doctor than the Daleks are. And part of why I say that is like the end of this episode, the Doctor goes over like he takes the trigger for the bomb, and in a nice moment, they're like, "Why don't you just put it on a delay and send it up there?" And he's like, "I can't do that. I have to give him a choice." And he sends himself up there, and they're like, "Do it. I don't care. I'll go out in glory knowing that I took you with me." And it's like you look at the Daleks and you look at the Cybermen and all of the other like big bad guys in the Master, all of them have like a survival instinct. Even at their worst, they'll do whatever they need to do to keep themselves alive. The Sontarans are not like that. If I accomplish the goal, if I die honorably, I don't care. Like I live, my purpose in life is the glory of warfare and killing other living beings and eventually dying myself. And that is like so opposed to the Doctor's whole worldview of like enjoying life for the beautiful stuff in it and stopping conflict and generally avoiding violence.
If I
It's
remember correctly, aren't they like bred to be like that though?
yeah, there's an in-story reason. There's so much stuff that you could do there, just like the Doctor and a Sontaran in a room having a discussion would be such a cool thing, and it's like, we haven't pit them against each other in so long. And it's part of why I want them to face 13 so badly, because she, more than any other Doctor, is like, just experience everything for the joy of life and like try as hard as you can to be a pacifist.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have these creatures who are just like, yeah, you can kind of play them for laughs, and we do play them for laughs a bit in this episode, but in a lot of ways, there's something really horrifying about just how into violence they are, and that's all that they live to do.
I mean, they are like little bald Trump supporters.
No, stop. We're not
And they're
going.
also the Doctor Who's riff on the Klingons from Star Trek, which Sontarans were created after the original Star Trek, so that's a fair comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obsessed with violence. They're angry, bald little men. So
When you think Star Trek bad guys, you think Klingons. And it's
Mhm.
like they are that juxtaposition where like Starfleet is all about peace and exploration. And the Klingons are like, no, just murder everything. Violence.
Violence for the glory of the Empire!
I can take the Klingons more seriously. I think the problem with them is aesthetically, they're very small. They look like little potatoes.
It wouldn't help that them being used as a gag in recent years has been rammed into the ground for all it's worth.
Even when it's not Strax, like Strax individually, I don't really have a problem with. He either works for you or he doesn't. But the fact that we keep doing it with just the whole species, just let me write a Sontaran episode for you guys, please. I don't care if I'm American. Just that gives me more firsthand experience with warmongering. Just let me write an episode where the Sontarans are a threat again, please.
Introduce the Rutons back into the show, the race
Yes.
the Sontarans are in constant war with.
Do that, yeah, why not? I actually wanted to talk about the aesthetic because I am gonna differ from Lucy here. I actually like this look for the Sontarans. I like that they look not more potato-y, but more like they look less costume-y just because their heads are less misshapen, you know? I do kind of miss the thing. Was it Lynx or Steyr? Which one was the one that just like constantly licked their lips because the guy was like having trouble like moisturizing in the mask?
Ew.
That would be Link,
Yeah, maybe that's just a Lynx
the
thing.
Time Warrior one.
Yeah, maybe that's just a Lynx thing, but I like that as like a creepy little what if they all did that? Aesthetically, I think the blue makes them stand out more, the blue costume, than like the black costume. especially since we introduced the Jadoon last year, and they basically just have the big black costume and helmet anyway. Wait, do you think that's part of what it is? Do you think, like, making this episode, they were like, oh man, we made the Jadoon look exactly like the old school Sontarans with the, like, they're tall and they're black and they have a similar helmet. We have to make the Sontaran look different, or people will just be like, this is a Jadoon again.
Blue is an awesome color for space armor. Fight
Yes.
me.
It doesn't
I
look blue to me. It looks more like a cotton candy color to me.
Is it just because it's this episode and they're constantly in purple lighting though?
That might be it.
Looks like an MTV production.
I like the purple aesthetic personally. I like how filled with neon purple this episode is. I feel like this is kind of a happy accident if that is the case, because there are definitely merits to the old school Sontaran designs, but I feel like I like the modern designs more. I like the blue. I like the fact that they're so short. Like, yeah, it gives them all kind of like a Napoleon complex, but it's just a weird thing. It makes them more alien. Like, yeah, they were really tall before, and you could argue that is also like an alien trait, but this whole army of really short, like, warmongering guys, there's something really strange about that, and I like it for the strangeness.
I will give it this, even though it's not aesthetic I personally care for. It is something unique to Doctor Who, which I like, so I will give it to them for that. Which, that was one of my bigger problems with the newer seasons. Even if it's not something I personally like, at least it's something I won't see anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, hey, a potato head is still more creative than just taking a rhinoceros head and putting it on a person.
Yes.
I swear, we know for a fact that the Jadoon are coming back in Series 12. I'm gonna be so mad if I watch the Jadoon episode and I'm like, we could have just made this a Sontaran episode. Why did we use the Rhino guys?
Yeah, I think they will be in it in some way. I don't know how much they will be in the new season. It could be just a cameo. It could be an entire story for all we know.
There's also, we briefly mentioned him, but their collaborator in this episode, the classic human who gets duped by the bad guys,
Yeah.
Luke Radigan, who has some kind of condition. Agreed. Do we agree on that he has something going on mentally?
I don't know. I don't know if he has, a mental condition.
I feel like that actor's performance really projects like he has some kind of neurological disorder, and it's just not talked about.
Maybe. I don't know, because back then, most people didn't even know they exist.
Luke Radigan kind of comes off as a egotistical character who is a genius. He knows it, and he loves bragging about being right, and he happens to be given a performance by the actor that comes off like he has Asperger's.
Yeah. And also just like the really, really childish way he reacts to things. Like, he literally, like, when everyone walks out on him, he's like, I'm clever! And he literally, like, throws his hands up and stomps his foot. It's like, I want to know how much of this is in the script.
Yeah, that's another thing with the RTD era where actors would just act over the top because it's a kid's show.
The thing is, I don't think it's just like an over-the-top silly thing. Like, I like to think that that's part of the character, because it makes him a little bit more interesting and kind of more sympathetic. It's especially in the bit where, like, he gets betrayed by the Sontarans and they're like, the psych fooled you. His reaction is a little bit more extreme than I think you would expect, where, like, he doesn't just take it bad. He, like, lies on the ground, sobbing his eyes out. He feels kind of like he's just a little kid in a slightly older guy's body.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, I feel kind of bad for him. It's like he's just there by himself and he's got a gun and it's like, well, what do you do now? What the heck am I doing? And, like, he does eventually just decide to kill himself, so I feel kind of bad for him, even as he is also very obnoxious.
I don't know if it was intentional or not. Weren't thinking about putting that kind of stuff in TV shows back in those days.
Yeah, like, putting stuff in the media I can see, but I feel like most people knew what it was.
I don't know. People are weird.
If there's anything that real life events have taught me, it's never underestimate how terrible and inconsiderate people are willing to be just because they can.
But, like, yeah, other little character moments that I think works. Donna pointing out that there's no sick days was a smart little thing. It's like,
Mhm.
of course, she would be the one person in the room to notice that. Like, no one even pretends to be sick so that they can take a day off. No one really.
Also,
And
like how she said, "I'll take a salute."
yeah, yeah. And also, like the whole bit with her on the Sontaran ship, and like she's in the TARDIS and she's got to like covertly get out of there without the Sontaran spotting her. I love that bit
Mhm.
because like she's genuinely terrified. We also get more of that like sort of low self-esteem thing she has where she's like, I cannot do this. They will get me. They will kill me. I can't do it. And the doctor's got to be like the voice in her head being like, stop talking about yourself like that. I know you can do this. And it's like the switch that she has from like being so terrified to when she actually like hits the Centauran with the hammer and she's like, back of the neck. And it's like suddenly she's got this great confidence. And I'm like, yes, I feel so happy for you. Succeed, my girl.
It's very cute. I love that little moment. Like I said, lots of little nice, cutesy moments with her and the doctor. Again, I think this is just a theme though throughout the season.
Yeah. This is her character arc, is that like she thinks that she's insignificant, that she can't do anything. And I
Mhm.
like that we're showing instead of telling with that.
And Donna going to see her family when the doctor initially thinks that she's leaving for good.
Yeah. It's like, and you just mean that you're going for a visit, don't you? Yes. It's
Donna's just like, you Dumbo.
Like everything has to be so dramatic with you all the time.
I like that though. I like that in this case it's just Ten's character to be that over dramatic.
Yes, he's just, oh, there's a war that's happening all the time.
Speaking
Oh
of
yeah,
though,
and Martha married Tom Milligan off screen
and
and is
then
getting
we'll
divorced from him off
ex-
screen.
exactly. We'll married and divorced him, and he couldn't even be bothered to show up. And it's like I only even know who he is because we just went back to those episodes. But I'm like, for years I was like, who? Who is that?
Now you know, and you're like, oh.
I didn't even know she was together with that guy that plays Lucifer. I was like, wait, what? That's her fiance?
For the
Okay.
longest time, I was like, is that the other doctor nurse guy who was in Smith and Jones, like talking to the Jadoon? Is that who she's talking about? Did we get that guy's name? And like, no, it's this guy from that other episode. Like, oh, okay. Weird to put this detail in there and then divorce them off screen, but all right, whatever, I guess. I
Plus, rewatching these two episodes, it kind of makes me wish that Martha kept returning throughout the Moffat era as the Doctor's new version of Brigadier Stewart, as I really enjoyed that dynamic.
you
It
mean
just would have been fun for that to have been a recurring thing to connect eras of the show.
yeah, and Colonel Mace, who we have here, is serviceable. He's fine.
But he's no Lethbridge Stewart.
Yeah. I should have looked up that actor because I wanted to know, is his jaw just like that? Or is he doing that for the performance? Because if so, that's really cartoony. Where he's like constantly doing like the I'm a stern military guy jaw.
And the face he makes when the Doctor says that he wishes that the Brigadier was there.
Yeah. It's like, unfortunately, he's stuck in Peru. It's like, you will regret not just getting Nicholas Courtney, you guys. Come on. You
I
had your
mean,
one.
you
This
got to
was the
show up for a cameo in the Sarah Jane Adventures. You could have gotten him to come back on Doctor Who
this
if you
was
really wanted to.
this was the one time. I know it's not you, but Moffat, this show will constantly spend years wallowing in its own regret of like, why didn't we bring the Brigadier back? You had the opportunity. Ah, whatever.
Not just here, but in Aliens in London World War III back in Series 1,
Yeah,
when they
probably.
brought in all the alien experts from around the world. I mean, you'd think the Brigadier would be one of those experts they'd bring in.
The more I think about it, the more I kind of can see from their perspective, though, where it's like in series one, the idea is that we're going to make this a jumping on point because a lot of people haven't watched this show in a long time or at all. So you don't want to throw in too many old characters and callbacks. So series one is series one. It's the beginning of the new show. It's not a continuation of the old show necessarily. Back to this episode, and the reason I say that is I can also see where they're coming from with this episode, where I don't know if he could have served the same purpose. We kind of need someone who's never faced the Centaurans before, doesn't have the relationship with the Doctor where they'll listen to what he says.
Mhm.
Because if the Brig was in this episode, we'd have a lot less conflict because the Doctor would just be like, all right, it's the Sontarans, do this, 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 and this. And he'd be like, all right.
You still have the Doctor constantly telling UNIT that they're going to get their asses kicked by the Sontarans, and that doesn't happen, and the Doctor is proven wrong.
Yeah, that's kind of a shame. I think this episode is pretty good overall, but I think as far as the conflict goes, the complaint that I've heard a lot that I think is pretty valid is like, it makes the Sontarans seem like kind of wusses, where it's like you have the clever plan, stop the gunfire with gas or whatever that like expands the bullets or like the frequencies or whatever. And it's the Sontarans being covert for once, or sort of like they're playing the long game. They're not just going in guns blazing as a first move, and that's smart. But as soon as they have access to bullets again, they just start going down like flies, and it makes the Sontarans look really wimpy.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I get it. It's a two-parter. We've already kind of done as much screen time as we had, and the Sontarans have been on the front foot for most of the story. But I don't know. You could have the battle itself seem a little bit more even, like even with guns back. Like, if you're gonna make a big deal where the Doctor's like, I keep telling you, you can't fight Sontarans. It's like, really? Once we get access to firearms back, it seems like it's not a big deal.
No, they just drop like little flies, and it's like, that was easy. Why would
Yeah.
you kill them again, Doctor? Back of the head. Yeah, you don't need to do that.
Why weren't we consistent with that? Why didn't we make the back of the head thing like their only weakness?
I could give an explanation, but that would be giving the creative team of this two-parter too much credit.
I mean, you could just say they decided to walk around without their helmets on like a bunch of morons. Or was it just that one?
Well,
was it just the
even
one?
that's not true. It's just the one guy
Yeah.
that happens to be wearing the same Sontaran mold he would later use for Strax.
Yeah. It's also the same actor, right?
Yes,
One
it
of them.
is.
Yeah. Even when it's non-Strax Sontarans will keep using him. And I'm like, can we get some other actors to be Sontarans again, please? I don't know. It's just let me do Sontarans, please. Do something cool with the Sontarans again. I'm begging you.
Make the Sontarans great again.
What?
And dancing around one major aspect of this two-parter, and that is the Martha Jones clone.
Yes, I was gonna mention.
Yeah.
I love that the Doctor's like, I knew from the very beginning, and if you watch through the episode, he's absolutely right. Like, the very first scene that they're interacting, you know that he can tell it's a clone. But he's like, you're not gonna call your family, who you love so much, and who, like, went seriously traumatizing experiences the last time that we met up? No? Oh, I'm sure they're fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, Martha, wink.
And the part where the Doctor tells Martha clone, frankly, you smell.
Yeah.
That was the major getaway. I wonder what she smelled like.
Probably smells of that green stuff they've had the clone bathe in.
Yeah, this broccoli or something like that. There we go.
Bad, soggy, moldly broccoli.
Broccoli scented kidney stone is Martha Jones.
God.
Oh no.
That's maybe also, though, an aspect of the story that we maybe could have done more with. At the end, it's a little bit of a weird gray area because she's done nothing but, be evil, and then she dies, and I think the episode wants us to have sympathy for her, although it's a bit of a weird situation because Martha does have sympathy for her, but the Doctor has zero. Like, he does not care. And it's weird because even with as edgy as Ten can be sometimes, he's generally still an empathetic person. And he's like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He's just like, whatever. You're a clone. You're dying. Tell me what I need to know. I do not give a crap. It's a really interesting reaction for him to have because it's like, to what degree then is that the episode saying she's a clone so she doesn't matter? And does that like counter with the presentation of that scene? It's really weird.
Yeah, it's not explored enough though. It's like they're trying to make us feel sorry for her and everything, and she's like upset that she's dying, and she's got all this life ahead of her, and then she just dies, and then the Doctor's like, "Okay, let's get going."
We always treat the Sontarans themselves like they're different individuals. Like they do groupthink, obviously, but they're never treated like the same person, and it's the same cloning process, I imagine. So it's a little interesting.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like it's like we want to kind of up the stakes and also take Martha off the field for a bit, but keep Freema Agumon. So let's do the clone thing. When really I feel like the bad guys cloning one of the companions should just be its own episode.
Mm-hmm.
A whole episode with commentary about do clones have rights?
I forgot we do that episode, and like we'll save that discussion for when we get there, but we kind of have to like contrive a whole plot device reason in that episode for why they're not technically just clones anymore.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to have it here, though,
Yeah.
because this is like straight up clone.
Especially again, since it's a really interesting facet of the Sontarans. Imagine we did do that, where it's like, you're not a real person, you're just a clone. All of the Sontarans are clones. Do we not consider them a whole race, a whole species of individuals? Like, why is that different than when it's a human clone?
Yeah, like I said, they don't get into it enough, so there's really not much else to analyze. It's like, okay, we have a clone here, but we're not going to make any real commentary.
There's so much cool stuff I could do.
I have to make the video.
I mean, you could do a lot of potential with having a companion of the Doctor be a clone of someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exploring what it means to even be a person, but
Decent two-parter. I mean, it gets the job done, but they miss a lot of opportunities that could have made this a classic.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. I enjoy coming back to it. It's one that I do tend to come back to sometimes of my own volition, but it's not a lot of meat on the bones. Although, two little things. One is that I'm not sure the Doctor like reverse psychologying a machine makes sense.
No,
He's in the car and
that was pretty silly.
I think it was pretty much done for a laugh. Like when they get out of the car and it doesn't explode, the Doctor's like, "What? That's it?"
yeah, the explosion bit I get, and that's a funny gag. But
Mm-hmm.
like leading up to that, where it's like you're programmed to do the opposite of whatever I say, right? That shouldn't be what it's
Affirmative.
programmed to do. I thought it was programmed to do whatever the Sontarans say.
Yes.
Like it feels like we kind of just pulled that out of our butts because we needed a way to survive this scene.
Yes.
You
But,
just couldn't have the
secondly-
Doctor fix it with his magic wand.
Yeah, that's true. Although I might have preferred that. Who knows? But secondly, because I know that we're going to dump on her a lot later, Donna's mom gets a pretty decent. She's pretty decent in this episode. She's not too obnoxious. She has a couple of actually funny lines. When like Donna and the Doctor are trying to get Wilfred out of the car, and they're like, "What do we do?" And she just takes an axe and destroys the windshield. And is like, "Well, what are you waiting for? Get out!" That was great.
Like, you morons, just smash the window.
That was a cool Donna's mom moment.
Probably her only one.
Yeah.
but Okay.
It's sort of like Doctor Who's version of the Indiana Jones scene where you think there's going to be a sword fight, but then Indy just shoots him.
Yeah.
Yeah, my overall thoughts on this one are pretty much I just have no strong feelings towards it one way or the other, and I'm probably not going to come back to it unless I have to do like a review again for it. So,
That's fair.
So, to varying degrees, we're all in agreement.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
That's impressive.
Is it? I mean, I feel like we're in agreement fairly often.
sometimes.
It's a spectrum. It's a
Oh,
spectrum.
just wait till we get to the later half of Series 6.
Yes, I'll be defending everything, and you guys will be trying to dump on everything.
We'll see what happens later.
But even then, my issues are really with just let's kill Hitler, Night Terrors, and the Wedding of Every Song.
Yeah, really, outside of those three, we'll get to it when we get to it. But I've got my fair share of great things to say about the latter half of that series.